Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here. Back to Mars, back to Gale Crater. I'm going back over some old images taken years ago from Sol 173. I've got a Gigapan up here by Neil Spence. This is a nice Gigapan. And we have what look like a couple of skulls here. Well, at least one here. I'll zoom into it right away, show you. Got the two eye sockets there, a big bulbous large cranium, and some interesting details which I'll show you more of in a second. There's also another one here, but this is a bit unclear. I'm not sure about that, but we'll have a closer look at some of these things. But before we get into that straight away, I will show you this. A friend of mine called Billy Carson has just launched a new Instagram style social media app. It's called Unite the 99. I've just signed up to it. I've got it, my profile up here, ArtAlienTV of course, and this latest find I put up on here. This is a kind of picture sharing and social media app. It's really nice, it's really simple. You can get it on your mobile device, but you can. There's also a desktop version. I've got links to it here on Mars Magazine, and I've got an article here. Here's the video from my friend Billy Carson, great social media app, and there's links below here that will link you up to the desktop version and the mobile version. There's two different mobile versions for different types of phones, and here's the desktop version. I'm using it on the desktop of course, but you can use either. It's nice and simple, it's clean, it's snappy, and really well designed, and it won't hurt your eyes like some of these do if you spend too long on them, because it's nice and dark, so you won't get glare from your screen. That's a big plus for me because I spend all day on the computer, going from all the different groups I manage and channels and everything else, and I do suffer from headaches, so that's a good thing. So this is new. This has only been up for a few days, I think. There's a few thousand people on here already, which is quite pretty cool for how long it's been going. And Billy will also be launching a video platform soon as well, and I will keep you informed about that. It's going to be very similar to YouTube, and it should be good. Okay, here's the advert. I'll put a link to this video in the description. Unite the 99 social media app. There we are. I will be plugging this for the next few videos, and having links to it all over everything I'm doing at the moment. Billy Carson's been a friend for a number of years now. I've done a number of shows with him. He's also been on Ancient Aliens a few times, like myself, a couple of times at least. And he's been all over stuff in America, all over different documentaries. He's brought out books. He did a book recently about Thoth, the Emerald Tablets, I think it's called, which you can get on Amazon. That's a top-selling book now. So he's been very, very busy. He's an entrepreneur, a very clever man, and a lovely chap as well. So good for him. So let's get on with it. I've got loads of stuff here to look at. Let's go straight to the folder and look at it up close. Now here's the meme clip I did just a couple of hours ago. And we've got a clip from the raw image here on the right and the enhanced clip in the middle. And if I show you the actual Gigapan, I'll show you where to look. Let's go back to here. Now this is one by Neil Spence. There are a whole bunch of Gigapans for Sol 173. This I think is one of the better ones, but A, because it's not too dark, and B, it's not too distorted. Some of them have got too much shadow in and you can't see into the shadows. The sign of a really good Gigapan is you should be able to look underneath the rocks and still see details in the shadow. That's why I never darken them too much myself, because often that's where the goodies are, okay? In shadows, next to rocks and ridge lines and that kind of thing. And if they're too dark, you simply can't see stuff. But this one's pretty nice, I like this one. A lot better than most. And there it is. And it's right up in the top left corner, and the Gigapan is huge. This is made from like about 170 images or something, a ridiculous amount of images. And it's a huge Gigapan. I've made one myself, which I've also got up here as well. And the place to look really to start with is over here, because we have the shiny lizard, the famous find from back in 2013, I think. This was found. I did a few videos on this. There's that lizard there, and there's a crab just here. You see the legs there? See these little legs? It's like a little crab, or something very similar, some kind of arthropod. Now, is this a living lizard? Possibly. It's very shiny. Some people thought it was a metal object. It's not. Some of the other lizards and snakes that I found on Mars are very shiny and have this almost metallic, shiny brightness to them and reflect the sun. So it's similar in colour and luminosity to some of the other reptiles that I found, which look like they're living, like the sidewinder snake that I found years ago also, not far from here. So that's a good one to look at. That's right over on the right of the image. There's tons of stuff in here. I won't go through all of it now because we'll be here all day long, and we don't want to take all day with this. That's one thing to look at. There's a very interesting rock here, which I call the Tsunami Rock. I did a video on this back in 2013 also. This is full of fossils, including crustaceans and even rodents and all sorts. But you've got to take a clip of it and really brighten it up and play with the contrast. There are better images of that, closer ones, but it's a bit dark in this one. There's tons of stuff down here. I won't go through all this. So the main thing we're looking at is right up here in the top left corner. And there it is. One big skull. And how big is this? I would say quite large. I would say at least 12 inches, possibly more. If it's that far away and it still looks pretty big, then it must be pretty big, if you know what I mean. We've also got these nice blocks here. Stone blocks. This one here looks artificial. In other words, it looks like it's been quarried and cut. But we can't really see enough of it to tell for sure. So that was pretty cool. There's loads and loads of weird things in here. And I'm sure that you space detectives out there will find a lot more. So if you find anything really interesting, come to Mars Magazine and post it up here. And I may show it in a video coming up. There's a couple of other things I found recently. There's one or two other things I found. There was this thing I found last night. I don't know what it is, but it looks like an asparagus twig or something. Now, it's probably not. This is probably more likely some of these sedimentary layers are kind of all split into long, sort of flat layers, and then the wind erodes it. But this one's pointing exactly the opposite way to all the rest. All the rest are lying down flat on the ground. You can see some of them here. But there's some interesting stuff here. And underneath, there almost seems to be what look like roots down here. So perhaps this is a growing thing with roots showing below. Or perhaps it's dead, who knows. But either way, it looks kind of like an asparagus or some kind of plant with a point to it. And I didn't know what it was. I just posted it up and see what people had to say. Some people said it looks like an asparagus or a little cacti. It could be a type of very narrow cacti. It's got knobbly bits on it. It's got some knobbly details. So just because it looks the same colour as the surrounding rock doesn't mean it's a rock, of course. As I've said 100 times before, and the colours are a little bit hard to go by sometimes. And everything tends to look this dusty colour anyway because of the atmosphere and the fact that everything is covered in this sticky dust that sticks to everything, including the rover. The rover is absolutely covered in this kind of orangey dust. So there was that. So I don't know what that is. I'll put some clips of all these things in at the end as usual anyway. Let's get on with it and look at the main thing today. I've got the meme clip here, and basically you really don't know how to enhance it much. I've just colour corrected it really and added a little bit of contrast and brightness. As you can see, there's not a huge difference here. There's no added details, just a bit of colour and brightness, okay? And you can see when you zoom in, we've got teeth here, broken teeth, a whole row of broken teeth there. Unfortunately, they're not in very good shape. Nose here, okay? Let's make that a bit smaller actually, that's annoying. And we've got an eye socket here, quite a clear one, and another one here, quite a clear one, okay? We've even got blue eye detail inside, just here. Look at that blue. That is insane. So how old is this? It's still got some, what looks like fleshy material on it. There's also some interesting kind of structures coming off the top of the head here, possibly damage or something. Don't really know what that is. Could it be hair? Doesn't really look like hair. But one thing I did wonder about with this is there seems to be two more eyes here. Now, human skulls have these things called foramen, which are basically holes in the skull. And we have them at various points. If this was a human skull, there would be one here. One here. There'd also be some down here below the nose. There's some here. And we also have them on our jaw. If there was a jaw added to the bottom of this, say there was a jaw here, there would also be some foramen here as well. These are like little holes in the skull where nerves pass through, and they go back millions of years. And in fact, none of our distant ancestors have the same ones as we do. Homo sapiens on Earth have a different set of foramen on their skull that appeared from nowhere, and there's no direct lineage that we trace. So it looks almost like the foramen on the human skull may be a sign of hybridization. And that's what these look like. Now, they could be eyes. They're equally spaced. If we draw a line up the center of the skull, we've got the eye on the left, eye on the right. We have the nose. Now the nose is the center line. You can follow that all the way up, all the way down here. We've got that center line here, which is the eyebrows. Now on the human skull, this center line, the brow line, is halfway. This isn't halfway. This is about a third almost. This is sloping back, so this bit over a third. It's not quite halfway. Now, if this was a human skull, this distance here would be the same as this. In other words, it would be shorter, like this. It would not be as tall as that. So it's obviously not human, it's humanoid. And the question is, are these eyes, we can't see enough detail to tell either way really, are these two holes here eyes? Did this thing have four eyes? Or are these just holes in the skull, like foramen, like humans have? That's interesting. I'll put up some diagrams and put them in at the end of the video of human skulls and stuff, and show you what I mean about the foramen, where they appear on the human skull and on the chin and everything. And we'll see if we can line these up. Because this is a very specific evolutionary trait that humans have, and they're very specific. They're very specifically placed on the skull, and it may be possible to determine with these if there's any relationship between us and these rather large-headed, ugly, or scary-looking Martians. Okay, now this is very similar to another one I found a while back, which I'm going to briefly show you now. This big sort of overhanging rock here, and there's another skull here. Now I showed this in the previous video. This isn't a very good shot of it because unfortunately the sun angle has put it all in shadow. You can see the teeth here. I've got the video up of it here to show you, which is this one. Now this is taken on a different sole from a slightly different angle further back, looking across and down at it, but it's angled differently, and you can actually see the same thing and that same rock above it, but from a better perspective. And I'll let that play through a little bit, and it will show you the enhancement there. There we are. Now, it's not immediately obvious, like a lot of these things are. You've really got to push the contrast a bit, like I've done here, to show the detail. So there was that. So check that out. I'll put a link to that at the end of the video. Amazing Mars skull, right by the rover. There's a whole bunch of things in here, including what looks like a dead fish, and all sorts of crazy stuff. In fact, it probably shows them all at the end. And incidentally, if you think my videos are too long, you can always flick to the last couple of minutes where I put all the clips, okay? You don't want to hear me waffling on for ages. There's another skull near the rover here, just here, look. But this one's very, very mangled and sort of mud fossilized onto it and dried out and encrusted in sediment and crap. But you can see the eyes there and the nose and the mouth, and it's got hair, and even the hair has kind of got caked in mud and sediment, and it's all dried out and fossilized. So that's an interesting one. So check that out. So there are lots of them in the area, and this is yet another one for the collection. But incidentally, I think the one we're looking at today is very similar in size and head shape to this one, but we're seeing it from the front. We're seeing this one almost side on. We've got the two eye sockets here, nose there, and very big, large teeth here at the bottom. The bottom jaw's missing, or maybe buried. The maxilla here is quite enlarged with these big teeth, but the one we're looking at today is missing the teeth. Now, if this is the same species as that one, which it looks like, then these teeth would have been really big and chunky like this, okay? But we're seeing this from the front rather than from the side. But we do have a bit of side detail. So it's a good profile, semi-profile front aspect we've got here. And you could really see those possible forming or other two small eyes. Is it possible that they're eyes? It is possible. Or some kind of sensory organs of some sort, who knows? But it really got me thinking that. Let's go in close. There's not a great deal of detail here, but there's enough, especially around the nose here and the eyes. There's enough detail here to say that this is a skull. Without any doubt in my mind whatsoever, we have broken teeth, eyes, nose, strange cavities on the top of the forehead there, on the cranium, front of the cranium, and there's no ear. But obviously, if this is a skull, then there wouldn't be an ear. There would just be a hole just here where the ear was probably attached. Okay. Then I started looking a bit more carefully, and then I realised that we have something else right below it, which seems to be a flattened skull here, nose, mouth, chin, neck, other material here that may or may not be related, and what seems to be a split open skull, cracked open like that, with brain material showing and broken parts of the bone and material here. Look at that. Now, it's very pale and it's flattened out, so there's not much shadow in this part of the image because it's kind of squashed. Now, this may well have been squashed under loads of mud and in a mudslide or something, like many of these things have, and become squashed and flattened out, like others that I've shown. But check it out. If you look carefully, even in the raw image, let's go to the raw clip here. Let's move that across so we can see the raw clip. There we are. Now, you can even see an eye here, a nose, a mouth, chin, okay? And you can see this material coming back like this, inside an elongated head shape, pointed, similar in shape to many others that I've found in the area. So that's really interesting, but unfortunately there's not a lot of detail here because it's completely flattened and squashed and there's not much shadow, but you can see in here. Let me darken this down for you and let's see what we can pull out of that, because I've really brightened this, and sometimes you have to go the other way to actually show the shapes and details a bit more. Let's go really dark, and there we can see in here that eye, nose and mouth and chin quite clearly. It's quite well defined because we have a shadow next to it, and now we can really see the shape, and then we can really see that skull coming round like this, and the broken part here, it's all kind of smashed and broken, and it cracked. It's completely fractured open here. So that's a head injury, quite a serious one, a death injury. So there we are, crazy. And what's even more crazy about this image, but just to the right of it, we have a possible one here as well, okay? Now I've got some clips of that here. Now this may just look like a rock, but if you look carefully, you can actually see a nose cavity here. This is the maxilla. Teeth missing, there would be teeth here. They're not there. So we've got a nose cavity. We have an eye here and eye here. There we have it. Now, is that definite? Is that absolutely undoubtful? No. It's not a very good example, unfortunately. The eye sockets look a bit uneven. I think what it is, this is probably jammed up with clay and mud. And the one on the right here, if this was dark, if this was darkened out, then it would be a little bit more convincing if this was black. But it does look like one, but it's very ambiguous and not very clear. And in fact, there's some other animalistic looking shapes in these rocks. Now, not everything that looks a bit like an animal in a rock is an animal, but a lot of these are. There are thousands and thousands of skulls and statues and all sorts of things lying around in Gale Crater. I've probably showed over 1,000 examples in the last 7 years. About 200 of them are very clear, and there's probably another 1,000 which are unclear and very small and ambiguous. But there do seem to be some interesting things behind this here, which I've just noticed. Just here, really strange. There's one here, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth here, and a head. They're all kind of stuck together. So I think what a lot of these things are, these were arranged in like burial chambers, and they were just kind of lined up on shelves or on the ground in a small chamber, probably covered with a rock roof or whatever, like a dolmen, and they were piled together or lined up. This may explain why some of these things are all kind of lined up together in groups by these ridge lines and stuff. So there's something there as well, this one here, but that's maybe just me seeing stuff there. So not really sure about that, but there does seem to be something here that, they've got an eye there, it's quite comical looking, nose, and some smile detail there. Okay, so that may be a carving, don't know, it may just be a coincidence, but there's so many of these things, they really cannot be all coincidences. And when we look, let's go to the Gigapan and have a look at that little ridge. You can see that really clearly. It's smiling and laughing, comically. There's even teeth detail there, it seems, just here. Right, there it is. I'm not making this stuff up, these things are there. They had a strange sense of humour, the Martians. Well, not that strange. Not unlike some of the funerary kind of art we have on Earth. Often in old burials on Earth, you would see skulls lined up in a row, often with little carvings or offerings or little statuettes and things like that. You've only got to look at the ancient Egyptians. They were often buried with hundreds of figurines. Not just 1 or 2, but hundreds, and jars full of stuff. Hundreds of jars full of things like food and wine and all sorts of things, valuables, jewellery, you name it, they were buried with it. Old Celtic warriors were buried with their swords and shields and status symbols like that, which meant that they were in a much more grand burial, unlike the common people were, who were probably just chucked in a pit. The noblemen and kings and leaders would be buried with their armour and often with their horses or chariots, much like some of the pharaohs were, so that's not unusual. So we should expect to see, when we see skulls and things lying on the ground, we should expect to see figurines and objects and shiny things like gold objects and jewellery. I have found a few items of jewellery, but not many. So it would stand to reason that there might be skulls lined up with possibly carved heads and things and artwork. This could have been inside of a small, this whole ridge here is probably a wall here at the back. Let's make that bigger so we can actually see what I'm doing here. This whole thing at the back here, coming along here, is probably a wall which came down, and there would have been a shelf here. There's the back of the wall there, and there's a shelf here coming down, and the skulls and things were probably lined up. There may have been lots more of them here, okay? And we would have had a flats with a shelf at the bottom here. You've got to think about the layout of these things and look at the overall shapes. So this pyramidal shaped stone here may have been part of it, sticking up. But it's all ruined and dilapidated, but there are definite blocks up here, like I showed a minute ago. These blocks look like part of a building, so I would imagine there was a building here. We've also got this crazy looking thing, which looks architectural with a face. I think that other people have shown that in the past. So there's some crazy stuff up here, really crazy. Was this part of a burial chamber? I think so, part of a building. And I think the reason why we see a lot of these things lined up is because they were deliberately lined up and often had figurines or little carvings in between, depicting various people, maybe family or gods and goddesses, that kind of thing. There have been many figurines that I found. So another row of statues and skulls on Mars. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do check out that app I showed you earlier from Billy Carson. And he will, like I said, he will be launching a very new video sharing site, a bit like YouTube, very soon. So I'll keep you posted on that. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon.